That night, the air in the MGM Grand felt different. Not electric, not celebratory, heavy. The 19th of August, 1995. Mike Tyson walked into a boxing ring for the first time in 4 years. The world watched. The cameras rolled. The announcers spoke his name with a strange mixture of reverence and uncertainty. But no one knew what they were actually watching. This wasn't a comeback story. It was something else entirely. 4 years earlier, Tyson had been the most feared man in sports, a fighter so dominant that opponents were beaten before the first bell rang. His presence alone carried weight, literal, psychological, suffocating weight. Then came the conviction, the trial, the sentence, 3 years in an Indiana prison. When the iron door closed behind him, the world assumed it had seen the last of Mike Tyson, the destroyer. Some celebrated, others mourned. But everyone agreed. Prison changes a man. They were right. They just didn't understand how. Inside those walls, Tyson wasn't training for a fight. He was surviving a different kind of battle. One fought in silence, in solitude, in the space between who he had been and who he might become. He read philosophy, religion, history. He converted to Islam. He grew quieter. Some saw redemption. Others saw calculation. But what no one could see, what no camera could capture, was the war happening inside his mind. Because when a man like Tyson loses everything, 2 paths open before him: collapse or control. And on that August night, the world would find out which path he had chosen. The opponent didn't matter. Peter McNeeley was a journeyman fighter, selected specifically because he wasn't a threat. The match was designed to be easy, a soft return, a confidence builder, a reminder that Tyson could still do what he'd always done. But that was the problem. Everyone expected the old Tyson, the savage, the destroyer, the man who entered the ring like a force of nature and left opponents broken on the canvas. What walked into that ring on August 19th was something else. The bell rang. Tyson moved forward. McNeeley charged, and in 89 seconds, it was over. Tyson won by disqualification after McNeeley's manager stormed the ring, stopping the fight before his fighter could take more damage. The crowd erupted. Tyson raised his arms. The commentators declared it a successful return. But something felt wrong. Not wrong in an obvious way. Not in a way that could be pointed to, or measured, or explained in a post-fight interview. It was in Tyson's eyes. The coldness was still there, the precision, the violence, but the rage, the uncontrollable, animalistic rage that had once defined him, was gone, replaced by something colder, something more deliberate. And that's when people began to realize prison hadn't broken Mike Tyson. It had rebuilt him. Let's go back. Before prison, Tyson fought like a man possessed. His trainer, Cus D'Amato, had molded him into a weapon, disciplined, technical, devastating. But after Cus died, that discipline fractured. Tyson became unpredictable, volatile. His personal life spiraled. His fights became spectacles of chaos. He was still winning, but he was losing control. The conviction didn't just take away his freedom. It forced him into a space where chaos couldn't exist. In prison, there are no distractions, no entourage, no fame, no escape, just time. And in that time, Tyson had to confront the question every broken man must eventually face. What happens when the thing that made you powerful is also the thing destroying you? Some prisoners lift weights, some fight, some survive by becoming harder, meaner, more dangerous. Tyson did something different. He studied, not boxing, not training, not strategy, philosophy, stoicism, the writings of men who had faced their own prisons, literal and metaphorical, and emerged with a different kind of strength. He read about discipline, not the discipline of a fighter preparing for a match, but the discipline of a mind learning to control itself. He read about fear, not the fear of losing, but the fear of becoming a man defined only by violence. And slowly, quietly, something shifted. But no one outside those walls knew it yet. The night of the fight, the announcers talked about redemption. They talked about legacy. They talked about whether Tyson could reclaim his place as the most dangerous man in boxing. They didn't talk about what Tyson had become, because Tyson wasn't trying to reclaim anything. He was testing something. Watch the footage again. Watch the way Tyson enters the ring. No theatrics, no showmanship, just focus. Watch the way he moves, controlled, precise, efficient. Watch the way he strikes. Not wild, not desperate, not driven by emotion, calculated. And watch what happens after the fight ends. No celebration, no relief, no triumphant roar, just stillness. In the locker room afterward, reporters asked him how it felt to be back. He gave short answers, polite, measured, nothing like the man who used to threaten to eat his opponent's children. This wasn't the Mike Tyson the world remembered. This was someone new, someone who had learned that the most dangerous opponent isn't the one standing across the ring. It's the one inside your own head. And for 3 years, Tyson had been locked in a room with that opponent. No referee, no bell to save him, no corner to retreat to, just him and his demons. And somehow, impossibly, he had won. But winning that fight came with a cost. The fury that made him unstoppable. The raw, primal violence that turned him into a legend had to be controlled, contained, channeled. And once you learn to control something that powerful, you can never fully unleash it again, because you know what happens when you do. The weeks after the McNeeley fight were strange. Tyson kept winning, fight after fight, knockout after knockout. But something was missing. The old Tyson didn't just beat opponents. He broke them, physically, mentally. He made grown men question whether they wanted to be in the same ring with him. This new Tyson was efficient, professional, effective, but he wasn't terrifying anymore. He was disciplined. And discipline, for all its power, doesn't create the same fear as chaos. People started asking questions. Was prison good for Tyson? Did it make him a better person? Did it make him a better fighter? The answers weren't simple, because what prison did to Tyson wasn't about making him better or worse. It forced him to choose. Between the man he had been violent, uncontrollable, self-destructive, and the man he could become controlled, intentional, aware, he chose control. But control meant sacrifice. It meant giving up the part of himself that didn't think, didn't hesitate, didn't question, the part that just destroyed. And without that part, Tyson was still dangerous. But he was no longer invincible. There's a moment in the McNeeley fight that most people miss. Right before the final exchange, Tyson pauses, just for a fraction of a second. He sees McNeeley's manager climbing into the ring. He sees the chaos starting. He sees the fight slipping away. And he stops, not because he's tired, not because he's hurt, because he's thinking. The old Tyson wouldn't have stopped. The old Tyson would have kept swinging until someone physically pulled him away. But this Tyson, the one rebuilt in a prison cell, the one who spent 3 years learning to control the beast inside him, this Tyson stops. And in that moment, something ends. Not his career, not his legacy, but the myth of Mike Tyson as an unstoppable force of nature. Because forces of nature don't pause. They don't think. They don't choose. And the moment you start choosing, you're no longer a force. You're a man. Years later, people would debate whether Tyson was ever the same after prison. Some said he lost his edge. Others said he gained wisdom. Both were right. Because the truth is, prison didn't take anything from Mike Tyson. It gave him something he'd never had before. A choice. The choice to be more than the violence that defined him. the choice to control the thing that once controlled him. And on the 19th of August, 1995, in front of millions of people, Mike Tyson made that choice. He stepped into the ring as a fighter, but he stepped out as something different. Not weaker, not softer, just aware. Aware that the most dangerous fight isn't the one in the ring. It's the one that never ends. The one between who you were and who you're trying to become. And that night, for 89 seconds, the world watched Mike Tyson fight both battles at once. He won the fight in the ring, but the other fight, the one that mattered more, was still going. And maybe it always would be. Some call it discipline. Others call it control. But standing there, in the center of that ring, with the crowd roaring and the cameras flashing, Mike Tyson knew the truth. He wasn't the same man who went into prison. He never would be, again. And whether that was a victory or a loss, whether he had gained something or lost it forever, was a question even he couldn't answer. All he knew was this: the beast was still there. But now, for the first time in his life, it had a cage. And Mike Tyson held the key.